Namaste and welcome everyone. It is me, Nina Sachs from Yoga Awakening Africa. Good to be here with Delphine de Hoop again. Delphine, thank you so much for joining again. How are you?
Namaste, Nina. I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Good. All right. So, quick one. Last time we were chatting a little bit about your journey to yoga and your practice with Ashtanga yoga. And you'd alluded that, one of the big things that helped you deal with, navigate, and overcome bulimia and anorexia was the yoga. So do you want to give us a little insight into that? Kind of like, what is the background to you with eating disorders, and how did you use yoga to help navigate a transition there?
Thank you so much for opening that space. It's quite an interesting, vulnerable, and old space to me, but I'm very happy to share that with you. So I grew up in a big city in Europe overseas, where we live amongst the concrete world mainly, and there's very little nature. And from very early, I was aware that I didn't want to have to buy something and buy into that system in order to feed myself. That was a problem. And we didn't have trees that we could just pick fruits from. so there was like a sense of disconnect right from the start. And then moving into being a teenager, I was always like, I was doing gymnastics and dance and always into my body. And at a gymnastic lesson, the one girl was like, whoa, my thighs are looking like, they've got these little ripples. And that's cellulite. They can't look like this. And that got to me. I was like, ooh, I don't want to wear ripples on my skin. I don't want someone to think that I look, like the words that she said. So then started that relationship with the appearance of my body. And that's a difficult one, because when there is anorexia, it's like there is like a glass that refracts, so it doesn't reflect properly, gives like a refraction of what the body is and what we see our body to be. So when we can be like 45 kilograms and skinny, we are going to look at these little flickers of the body. We are going to look at where the skin does folds and be like, no, we're fat. And then we're going to be so hard on ourselves. It's like, so no, I can't eat for 3 days, or I don't have like an apple every day for 3 days. And it just goes into that. And then in that space comes everyone's attention. So it's a very deep space to go into. And we're not aware that we're actually using that attention. We're just concerned with, my body is what people see of me, and I just need to make it beautiful. I just need to make it perfect. And I've got a diffracted view of myself. So that's, I guess, is the first part. Then they came into like, okay, this is very hard. I want to enjoy a meal with my friends. I need to sit at a meal with a family. And so then bulimia came into the picture. So my belief, I haven't studied that. I'm not a psychologist. I haven't, studied the whole frame of this, is that anorexia is a mental disease where we have a refracted view of our bodies and a relationship with our bodies that isn't healthy. And that mental disease can manifest into 2 physical forms, which is anorexia itself, in that we're not going to eat, like deprivation, or a bulimic form of anorexia, which is any food that we're going to eat, we're going to throw. And then we're going to feel like there's so many feelings that can come up with throwing up food, which is like a sense of relief, of heaviness, and of the energies that the food were carrying when, like, let's say you had a family meeting and the energies around that gathering, that's just too much for you. And so when that food is released, it's like, oh my God, thank you. There's that sense of control, of being able to control, again, our body and our nurturing. But then after that, there's obviously a sense of emptiness, and it's not comfortable, and we like depleted, we don't have energy, and we just want to be left alone, or we want to go and binge and repeat the cycle. So from that space, I guess someone could move into full-on bulimia, which then is not to do with the body image. You know, in my case, it was always related to like, I don't want to be fat. I want to have a light body. I want to be able to jump and run and, and have a light life. What came with, so I took the path of yoga as I shared in the first video, more as a mixture of meeting like that physical activity and the pain in my body. While I was on the yoga path in the beginning, I wasn't aware of the teachings that came out afterwards, right? I was just doing the work. I mean, a lot of gems came out of that work, but not around that. It took years and years of like, even like letting go a bit of the practice. And then there's a relationship with the practice that can also lighten a little bit, especially when we've got children and we've got so much going on. But for me, as long as there is a practice, even if it's like 10 minutes in the morning, even if it's 3 times a week, whatever you set your mind on, just keep up with it. And if you let it go, it's fine. Come back to it. You know it's there when you need it. So there's a relationship. But after like, I'm maybe 20 years, maybe more after all these events. And I can see how yoga has helped me. And I think my feeling is that it's by cultivating the relationship with my breath and the breath and the body, and allowing me to feel the pain that is trapped in the body, and to sit with it, to sit on that uncomfortable edge, because being embodied isn't easy. It's carrying all the trauma memory, the ancestral memories, and it's just the journey that we have come to do on earth, though, is to be in this body. But it's much easier to say, oh no, I'm going to be like a light worker, or just, I mean, I value light work a lot, but you can't do light work unless you're transmuting in the body. So, and that's not easy. That just takes whatever practice works for you, but that takes, honoring your body and being dedicated to it and to do the work, which is the different work for everyone, which is also beautiful, because then we go into that space of non-judgment.
Yes, yeah. Delphine, thanks so much for sharing that story, because it is a big one, and there are so many people out there who struggle with anorexia, who struggle with bulimia, and I don't think it's spoken enough of. And I really love the take that you kind of like give with the spin with the yoga, and kind of like how you were saying that the yoga gave you the space to allow you to feel the pain in the body, like to feel that emptiness, like giving you a safe space to actually allow those feelings to come up and for them to be transmuted and released in whichever way they need to. And I think that is one of the beauties that yoga does offer us, is having the safety of the mat or the practice to allow feelings and emotions to arise, and to know that it is okay. There were 2 things that you were talking about that I would love to just circle back to. Is like right at the beginning, you were talking about, where it all started was when you were at gymnastics and your friend was talking about like kind of like the waves on her thighs. And kind of like, do you find that when someone talks about their body or cellulite, does that still trigger you into kind of like the feeling of like what led you towards anorexia and bulimia?
No, I've moved into a different space. So
okay, with that, I'm gonna ask you how, because I asked because a friend I met the other day, she was saying, her daughter's in that space, and her daughter who has an eating disorder, and she can't go out with work colleagues or friends for breakfast because she's scared that someone in the group may mention something about like, oh, I've how many calories is this, this is gonna make me fat, and that a comment like that from friends or someone might trigger and spark her back into the space of anorexia, bulimia. So I would love to know, like, how did you navigate these triggers, and to get yourself out of that? Because I think that's a big one for a lot of people in that space.
Yes, and that was before I started doing yoga intensely. So I only started, I think, in my late 20, maybe 25, around that time. But so before that, from teenager to 25, I went on what I see today as like a full-on shamanic journey. So I started skydiving. And Belgium has a reputation for horrible weather. So I had to go to the south of France. So I started that journey of, and I loved skydiving because there was a relationship with air and with the body, where you can do gymnastic and use aerodynamics to move your body. And I just completely fell in love with that. I was obviously on an escape from all the studies, but I was lucky enough to cope with class quite easily, even to the university and going to skydive on the weekend. So I went on that journey, and that journey gave me a relationship with life and death. I went there because I wanted to die, to be honest with you. I was like, okay, I don't see the point here. Let me go on further on the edge. And I faced a lot of things, even unconsciously, not in the mind, like anxiety crisis before jumping. And I had to deal with the person, like, if you want to be in the plane, you have to eat a banana first. Because I'm not letting you on unless you have a banana before. And I'm like, okay, cool, I can do that. That's a good deal. And from that feeling of joy and release of adrenaline, I guess, that comes with that as well, and really like embracing a whole new path that no one followed in my family, that was just completely mine. I moved into, so I carried that path with, at some stage, buying a little combi, a little van, and living in my van in the mountains in the south of France. And I could only have these two mirrors, relationship with the mirrors. Oh my God. So only the retrovisors, the back facing mirrors, were the only mirrors I had for like 5 years. So I learned to live from a space of, let's just say, energy. What is my intention? Who am I? But not the mirror, me. Like, what am I radiating? And I really believe that that's where beauty comes from.
Yeah.
And from that, I had like friends also telling me, it's not about how thin you look, it's about how functional your body is. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. To be honest with you, so that relationship with the body, in terms of, if someone tells me, oh, there's a fickle, I'm not going to be triggered, because I have a deeper knowing of myself, but I am still looking after my body. So if I feel I go like a little bit on the heavy side, I'm like, nah, we're gonna use some practices to shift that, because I'm not feeling comfortable. So I'm very close to my body, but I embrace that, and I don't think that's a disease. I think that's actually very important.
Yeah, to have that deep awareness, intuition as how the body feels. So it's really interesting how, when you got more connected with your body, so instead of seeing it as separate, but actually stepping into it, that you were able to make the trigger less of an impact, that would trigger something off. Really interesting. And then the last thing I wanted to just tap on quickly is this idea of perfectionism, because I think that is a big one for so many people, and not just kind of like, when it comes to eating disorders, or diseases in that realm, but just a lot of people, maybe don't want to come onto screen like this because like the setting isn't perfect, or their hair isn't perfect, or what we have to say isn't perfect, like there's so much, with regards to like perfectionism that is out there. And what you were saying is like, at some point you just got to take action. So even if it's not coming to your mat to do an hour practice, but 10 minutes is fine. And even if it's not every day, even if it's just 3 times a week, it's fine. And it's having that gentle, more loving approach to oneself, that taking action, no matter how small, is more important than actually looking for the perfect action, because what is perfect?
Yes. So I think the yoga, where yoga comes in for me, is that relationship with myself. And it's shifted it from a place of control into a place of being, where it's, and doesn't matter where my practice is at because of my lifestyle or because of what I'm going through. I know that tool is there if I need to come back to center. It gives me, that tool is a security blanket for allowing myself to be and not control. Meaning that if I'm allowing myself to just be in the being, some chaotic things are going to come. That's what happens. If you're not controlling, then you're allowing space for things to come into your life, and they come in. But I have that tool, and I have my breath, and I've learned to cultivate a relationship with my breath and my body that makes me feel comfortable enough to welcome what is meant to come and to deal with it and to move on or grow with it.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And kind of like, I think the growth that has spurted on from there is maybe part of your sacred eating mentorship program that you've put together. So I think let's have a chat about that next. Does that sound good?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nina.
Thanks, Sophie.